When people think of Christian music, specifically Christian metal, your first thing is going to go, cringe! I've talked before on the channel that I am a Christian, and I do enjoy a lot of Christian music, but a lot of Christian metal is a dumpster fire. But I wanted to compile a list of some bands that you might not immediately know are Christian bands, or at least bands with Christian members whose faith is reflected in a lot of the music that they make. Because I do think there's a difference between the bands that just brand themselves as every single song is Christian and they're a Christian metal band, and I think that some of the best religious music, no matter what it may be, are the bands that are able to subtly put it into their music in a way that doesn't shoo off people that maybe don't ride that way, but also put it in an articulate and an intelligent way, not just dime a dozen and one-dimensional, which is what I think a lot of any sort of religious music boils down to, which if that floats your boat, perfectly fine. A couple of omissions from this list, but just honorable mentions. Everyone knows Creed. Everyone knows that Creed is like a Christian metal band, but I feel like a lot of people fuck with Creed, a lot of people like Creed, and I know they kind of have a reputation for being a little cringy, but I personally find a lot of their music to be catchy, and Human Clay is a really great alternative rock record. Another band that has put a lot of religious points into their music, specifically in more recent memory, would be Megadeth, and that is because Dave Mustaine is a born-again Christian. Not everyone knows that, but he's a born-again Christian, and there are tons of other extreme metal bands, or just metal bands as a whole, that you wouldn't know the lead singers of, or someone that is writing the lyrics is a Christian, and so they'll put a lot of that into their music. Another band that kind of flies under the radar that early on into their music was a lot more Christian-oriented than it is now is As I Lay Dying, which is another name most people wouldn't think has a lot of Christian themes in their music, simply because I don't think that the first thing people are going to think of when they think of a guy that murdered someone and went to prison is, good, friendly, wholesome Christian music. But without further ado, let's get into the list, and you can tell me down in the comment section below bands that are Christian or Christian adjacent that you personally enjoy that maybe people don't really know is as Christian as they are. I'm going to start this list out with a band that I fucking love, Impending Doom. So if you're familiar with the deathcore band Impending Doom, you might not know that the vast majority of their music is Christian music. They're a Christian deathcore band, and I feel like a reason that a lot of people may not know that is because not everyone that listens to very extreme music where you can't really always understand the lyrics unless you're reading along with them because the vocals are so gargly and low, which Impending Doom, sick fucking vocalist, the guttural growls on the dude is insane, you wouldn't necessarily be able to know that the lyrics are Christian oriented. And yeah, Impending Doom, front to back, pretty much every single song, or every other song at the very least, is Christian oriented. And considering how brutal they are and how deathcore isn't really known for boasting a lot of religious bands, and quite the contrary, a lot of the bands that were contemporary with Impending Doom were very anti-religious and blasphemous and always put that into their music, they kind of slid under the radar as a band that people didn't necessarily know what themes they stood for. So yeah, Impending Doom. A very complex band to talk about religious stuff would be Breaking Benjamin. They have never outright said that they are a Christian band, and they've not gone on the record saying that their music is about it, but I am an aficionado of Breaking Benjamin. I fucking love them. They're one of my favorite bands. I've talked about it until I'm blue in the face on this channel, but if you go throughout their discography, there are so many songs that reference the devil beating the devil back, going to heaven, and asking God for help, asking God for forgiveness. Some of the songs just straight off the bat of my head that I remember is like The Great Divide, Defeated, Ashes of Eden, Dance with the Devil, Anthem of the Angels. There are so many songs that directly reference heaven, God looking above, trying to get help, trying to get salvation, trying to atone, trying to repent. There's so much theology in Breaking Benjamin's canon that it is impossible to go through an entire Breaking Benjamin album without seeing some reflection, and I think it's an interesting sort of Christianity in music because most of the time it comes in the form of self-doubt or insecurity or questioning faith, questioning your maker, questioning what you did to deserve something or how to get through a tough period, and I think that's a really cool way to put it into their music. And like I said at the start of the video, not all bands that have a lot of Christian music are just outright Christian or say they're outright Christian, and so the stereotype that people have in their heads of Christian music isn't necessarily always true, and you may not even realize as you're listening to these bands that yeah, goddamn, they stand for a lot of Christian themes in their music. If you're wanting a hardcore band from my neck of the woods, one of the biggest bands to come out of West Virginia, Zao. Zao is a Christian hardcore band. Don't know if you guys knew that, but especially a lot of their earlier material, it's kind of died down a little bit over time, but yeah, Zao is a Christian hardcore band. I compiled a little list of metalcore bands that are Christian adjacent. August Burns Red, Under Oath, Wolves at the Gate, and Oh Sleeper are all Christian oriented. Now, like I said, there are a lot of bands that kind of start more heavily religious than they end up, but bands like Under Oath and bands like August Burns Red were incredibly Christian led, and they were actually two bands that labeled themselves as Christian metal, or were labeled that in their early days, whereas Oh Sleeper and Wolves at the Gate are a little lesser known in terms of their Christian themes. Wolves at the Gate, out of this list, has wrote the most about Christianity and have a ton of direct songs that talk about God, that talk about religion, that talk about heaven, and so they are a band that you may not know upon first listen, but they are a Christian band. A pretty kick-ass band, Becoming the Archetype, is also a Christian band. Their name actually comes from a passage in Genesis, and a lot of their music boils down to Christian theology, but it's always put in a very beautiful and poetic way, as opposed to some of the bands that came before that are maybe a little bit more brutal with it or a little bit more simplistic with it in the case of bands like Breaking Benjamin and Creed. Becoming the Archetype kind of have that progressive and alternative sort of way of writing their lyricism to where it is pretty like deep a lot of times and deeply centered, and I feel like they're a band not everyone would know is Christian oriented. This one probably is obvious because of their name alone, but it kind of does just sound like a metal name. Demon Hunter is a Christian band, and they wear that on their sleeve. They're one of the bands on this list that just straight up are a Christian band, and a very kick-ass one. I've not been the biggest fan of some of their more recent output just sonically, but when it comes to sort of that core style, they really do kick ass and take names. If you have or haven't heard of the black metal project Antestor, that project is what is known as unblack metal, which is black metal from a Christian perspective that goes against the norms of what black metal usually stands for being very anti-religious and blasphemous and all that sort of thing. So if you aren't familiar with that project, or if you have heard of them before, that is a Christian project as well. And next up would be the band Phineas, who have literally worked as missionaries in Ukraine, if I remember correctly. With some more core bands, we have The Devil Wears Prada, who is another project kind of similar to August Burns Red and Under Oath, were very Christian-led in their early days, as well as, you wouldn't necessarily think a band called Betraying the Martyrs is a Christian band, but yeah, they are a Christian band, but you wouldn't know it because they don't really wear it on their sleeve that much. But the symphonic deathcore-y sound of Betraying the Martyrs, kind of like Impending Doom, you may not be able to like read between the lines, but they have a lot of Christian theology in their music. And I'll just throw something out there, a la Creed. If you're familiar with the alt-metal, alt-rock, sort of rap-rock project POD, you know, the great album Satellite by POD, they are a Christian band. Basically what I wanted to do with this list is kind of string together bands that are phenomenal, that have a lot of great albums under their belt, but they aren't just throwing it in your face about their Christianity, and they're not putting it in a way that's like one-dimensional, because I feel like a lot of people just kind of shrug their shoulders and roll their eyes when they hear Christian metal, but all of these bands are heavily determined by faith, by their religious values, and they put it in their music in an interesting and unique way that even if you disagree with it, it's still very passionate. It boosts the music up, and it shows that they really give a fuck about what they're doing and talking about, and I think that is fantastic. And there's a ton of other bands I could have put on this list, but I want to know your picks. What are some bands with Christian themes, or even bands that, as a conspiracy theorist, you suspect might be Christian-led in some form or fashion, kind of like Breaking Benjamin? Let me know down in the comment section below. I can't wait to hear it. Agree or disagree, there is no wrong answer. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.